Okay, let's get started. Please take your seats for the most exciting panel of the day.
So make Johnny.
This is it.
We're ready. It looks good.
Most of today, you've seen rather civil panels, and this one's going to be a little bit chaotic because we have the biggest one. We have 2 people online and 6 people in the room. So this is going to be exciting. But just a couple of updates for the people in the room and the people online. These panels have been recorded, so you can go back and watch these and watch the presentations separately. And at one point, I mean, we have a good audience in the room, about 20. We had about 90 people online, so we're doing a good job in reaching out to a larger community. And so this is like a room with an extra 100 people in it right now. So thank you to all the people online for joining. So let me get to my notes before I start passing the mic. So hi, I'm Mike Janicki from the National Academies, and would like to welcome you to the third panel discussion today that is titled Developing and Implementing Solutions for Healthier People and Homes, Communication, Education, Next Generation Research, and Community Engagement. As someone with deep roots in the Southwest, my family's history spans from military service to healthcare and education across Arizona and New Mexico. I'm really excited about moderating this third panel. So just a little bit about myself. I grew up in a military family with my dad in the United States Air Force as a veteran. My mom is a retired school nurse from the Albuquerque Public Schools, and her family has strong ties to Southern Arizona. She came from a family of miners, ranchers, healthcare professionals, and educators on the border around Bisbee, Douglas, and Tucson. And this week of Veterans Day, I'm reminded that my great uncle was the base commander at Fort Wingate near Gallup, New Mexico. And I learned this on a trip to Mexico when one of the shopkeepers who was in the US Army was talking to my mom about this. And it was just a fantastic conversation learning about my great uncle in Agua Prieta, Mexico. I grew up in Albuquerque, graduated from St. Pius High School. Oddly enough, since we were up here in the same, we're in the Four Corners, Tony Hillerman sent his kids to my high school. And they graduated a number of years before me. And so going back to some of what Mansell discussed earlier, and a lot of people drove here. I just want to say one of my highlights in life is to drive to the Four Corners region with Joe Leaphorn and Jim Chi on the radio. We're listening to them. And I have no idea how they could always get from like Shiprock or Windrock so quickly to Albuquerque. I mean, it's like right down the street and they were there. So, and so then a little bit about additionally, I worked at Los Alamos for a number of years, working in supporting a lot of chemistry programs, radiochemistry, energy security, alternative fuels. We worked on developing ways to store hydrogen in cars, chemical hydrogen storage for advanced automobiles. But a lot of work I did was in supporting radiochemistry programs, from looking at radionuclides in the environment to radio chemistry, radio pharmacology. One of the best projects I worked on was converting low-enriched uranium sources to Moly-99 for medical imaging. I mean, it's one of those times in your life when you realize that science can have such a big impact. I mean, a lot of people I hadn't heard of Moly-99 imaging until the time. 25 million Americans every year need medical imaging that involves molybdenum-99. So advances in science can have like real impacts in this world. And I mean, I think that's why we brought together these people today. You know, these great panels to discuss how advances in science and communication and policy can really affect different people's lives in a positive way. Back to today's town hall, a great panel on communication, education, next generation research, and community engagement has been assembled for this third panel here at San Juan College to close out the meeting today. The focus of the panel is on solutions, communications, and outreach. We have a large panel covering many topics. I'm going to keep my next remarks brief, and like I mentioned, everything is recorded, and everyone's full bios are available in the agenda. We'll start with hearing from 2 speakers whose expertise touch on communication and education. Nala Rain Nelson, you might recognize that last name from earlier, and Mallory Kwitaki Um, are going to be they're going to speak first. Nyla Rain Nelson is a student and works with the Cayenta, Arizona community on education and communication on wood stoves and radon. For the past 2 years, she's been serving her community as Miss Baker Middle School. Nyla Rain also enjoys her Navajo culture during presentations through traditional songs, and she's going to sing 2 songs for us later today to close out our town hall meeting. Mallory is a communications and outreach specialist with a community environmental health program at the University of New Mexico College of Pharmacy. She has created culturally relatable art to translate scientific ideas, health impacts, and research. So when organizing these panels and having discussions with Johnny Lewis, Menzel Nelson, and Pat Childers, one topic that was keenly made aware to us was solutions. So part of the solutions is next generation research. It is great that we have 3 graduate students from Northern Arizona University to discuss this topic: Eleanor Fair, Brian Perez, and Justin Wilbanks. Eleanor, Brian, and Justin are graduate research assistants and master's degree candidates in chemistry and analytical chemistry at NAU and Flagstaff. Staying on this topic of solutions and shifting towards community engagements, we have 2 virtual panels joining us through the magic of Zoom from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, and a representative from Red Feather. And Red Feather is an organization that is helping make healthy homes accessible through collaboration, education, resourcefulness, and advocacy. I mean, 4 fantastic words for today. Sebastian Jawaskiba is a senior Native American program specialist in the headquarters operations for the Office of the Native American Programs with the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. He'll be joining us virtually. Also joining us virtually is AJ Solkowski. He's a program analyst for lead hazard control and the Healthy Homes Program Division with the United States Department of, I'm trying to avoid saying HUD, I don't like that word, United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. Also joining us today is Roy Lee Hosting. He's the Four Corners Program Coordinator for Red Feather. And Red Feather, like I mentioned, partners with Indigenous communities to develop and implement lasting and impactful housing solutions, and is currently working with the Hopi tribe and Navajo Nation. So while we go through these talks, some guiding concepts and questions hopefully we'll touch on during the discussions. So perhaps we'll venture into what are examples of education and communication with the various communities. How can art be used to communicate scientific topics? How can interest in next generation research opportunities be increased? Are there low-cost, high-quality methods to monitor air and water that community members can operate? What are the available and potential improvements that can be done to create healthier homes? And what solutions can be developed from the grassroots levels? So, in closing these opening remarks, I will now pass the mic to Nala Rain. And she has a presentation that she is going to walk us through.
Yat shik edo shitene nala rena sinina shet hore cheat nina shle belegana bashishchin but ani dashiche belegana dashinele horene shedent nasha na kitsara shanahe shemado shije Lisa do Jacob Nelson wolye shitelek Lukritsky do kore Pete Nelson wolye shideja Leas no Nelson wolye shemasana do shiche Sharon do Frankatine wolye Chanel's Dando, Chanel's Dean, April K. Don Mantle Nelson Woolye. Hi, everybody. My name's Nala Nelson. I'm 12 years old. I go to school in Cayenta, Arizona at Baker Middle School. I am really grateful and honored to be here today to present to you guys about my presentation about radon and wood stoves. My name is Nala Ray Nelson again. I am really happy to be here to tell you guys that I learned so much from my family. At my school, I do year-round sports such as cross-country, volleyball, basketball, and track and field. I also ran for Miss Cayenta Middle School and Miss Baker Middle School. In 2022, our school was going through a name change, so I continued my reign as 2023 to 2024 as Miss Baker Middle School. I also go to science conferences like how I am today. I traveled kind of everywhere. I went to North Carolina this year with my Nolly man. That was a really exciting experiment. That was the first time I ever went on a plane. It was scary and cool at the same time. Um, for the past few years, I've been traveling to teach people about radon and particulate matter. Well, enough about me. Let's get into my presentation today. Okay, I can. In my community, we use wood stoves. Some say they're good, some say they're bad, but according to my research, they're kind of bad because they they they're really the air is really bad for your lungs. During my first year of Miss KMS, I did research about PM, particulate matter. I used 3 tools to help me with this research. Hey, look at it. It's little me on the screen. My grandma still uses a wood stove, like how my Nolly man was saying that he bought her a pellet stove, but she didn't. She didn't really like it for some reason. I used my tools to check her house for particulate matter. Her house was safe, don't worry, but PM can be really bad because it's in the air and you can't see it, but for but I feel like you can smell it a little bit. Um it's not good because it when it gets into your lungs it like it's like it makes it hard for you to breathe and stuff. My Nolly man wanted me to show you guys that every house, even if you don't have a wood stove, at least has a little bit of PM. In my research, my Che has a pellet stove and he had a little bit of PM in his house. PM usually occurs when you cook or vacuum. Radon is part of the periodic table. It's number 86. Radon is a radioactive gas that has no smell, odor, or taste. That's why it's bad and dangerous. This is my great-grandfather, Kid Ciatine. He was a uranium miner. He died due to the exposure of uranium and radon. Radon is actually uranium, but um but sometimes people think it's like a different thing. And the reason why he passed was because the uranium or radon was in his lungs for a long time. This You may be wondering why I'm showing you guys a map. You guys are probably wondering, I know the whole Navajo Nation. I know everywhere. This map shows us abandoned uranium mines on the Navajo Nation. I live in Kayenta, Arizona, which is near Monument Valley. And as you can see, there's a lot of uranium mines near Monument Valley. I have some family that live out there as well, but they are all fine and when I did readings at their house, there was no radon, bad radon, what's the word? Bad radon, yeah, levels. This is another example about uranium mines, and it also tells what I said in the beginning, that radon's odorless and colorless. When I presented this in North Carolina, I had a packet that would test your home for radon. Anyone who would like to test your house for radon in your house, you could go to my Nolly man in the back. He may have some radon packets if you would like one. Thank you for having me here today and presenting you guys about radon and PM. Thank you, Ishahet. Also, I am grateful that I was a part of this discussion this afternoon. Thank you all for trying to make a difference and helping my people understand. Ishahet.
Thank you, Noah. Now we're going to move to Mallory. And Mallory, I guess I don't need, I'm not going to introduce everybody again, but Mallory is going to talk about some of her work using art to communicate scientific messages. I think you can talk about whatever you want.
Well, that's an extremely tough act to follow. I am so very proud of you, Nala. That was a very good presentation, and I'm so proud of you. So hand me the little clicker there.
Oh, sorry.
So, is it? Yeah. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, yes, my name's Mallory Kwitowski, and from Zuni Pueblo. I'm from the Badger clan, child of the Turkey clan. I've been with the Community Environmental Health Program going on 8 years now. I initially began with the program under the leadership of Johnny Lewis, now under leadership of and the other programs we have under our umbrella at the Environmental Health Program. I initially started as the artist in residence, and I feel that the art that I have created since has given me a chance to really explore these other parts of our culture and our communities that also kind of go unheard. And so I feel that throughout this time, I've been able to kind of put together, I guess you can say, a set of tools to be able to use in communicating with our communities that we partner with at CEHP. And so I just wanted to kind of show my process in working with our communities and how I create some of the works that I'll be sharing. My initial slide here talks about, when we have these community listening sessions and these report back meetings with our community, a lot of the information that we share is very complex. It's very scientific, a lot of jargon, even in our healthcare circles, a lot of medical information isn't translatable in our languages. Some of our languages here in New Mexico are very descriptive. It's very hard to translate certain words. And in order to translate, you also have to really go further than that and not just using language, but pulling at ideas that our communities already know about. And so, knowing these things in the ways that we're raised traditionally, I always have to think every time I'm sitting in a scientific session, although I am educated in biology, my undergraduate degree is in biology from the University of New Mexico, I still have to sit there and think, how am I going to translate all of this to my grandparents? How do I even explain this if the words don't exist? I really have to know my stuff. I really have to figure this out and in ways to actually interpret what's going on. And then I also have to think about, how do I tell the children this information? A lot of this information you don't get and hear until you're in college, and some of our people are not there yet. And so I really have to dig deep and think about how I'm going to portray the work that I do. But I also want to put it out there that the art that I create is not meant to be just a unidirectional form of communication. It's multi-directional. I'm talking not just at community, and with researchers, policymakers, regulators, folks at EPA, NIH. I feel that I've been able to catch people's attention because art speaks a universal language. And that, just to reiterate, all the 57 tribes of our country, we are not a monolith. We're all very separate. And so we have to find these ways to tailor our information. And so I really enjoy that part of my work in that I get to, actually use my degree in my art and really dive into the specifics and the complexities of science, but also listen to my ancestors, listen to my elders, listen to the kids, and find ways to be inclusive of the information that I'm sharing. And so I really like to utilize the ideals of traditional ecological knowledge and indigenous ways of knowing, which again, it could be different across the board with our different communities. We work, as mentioned by the previous panel, UNM, our program works with several chapters of the Navajo Nation, Laguna Pueblos, Cheyenne River Sioux, and the Crow Nation in Montana. And then I also work with in other centers at UNM where we work with all 23 tribes in New Mexico and others. And so I really do a lot of my research both on the scientific end and on the cultural end, because we have to be very respectful of the different cultural protocols that exist in these communities. And if you have a working partnership with a community liaison, which I feel every program should, for every community that they work in. Someone mentioned before, we can't have 6 people talk for all Navajo Nation. We have, we really have to do the work and have representatives from each community that we work with. And so just to give, others that might not be so aware of indigenous ways of knowing, I listed 3 really good books that you should take some time to read. It's Native Science by Gregory Cajete, Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, and another one by our colleagues, Dr. David Bigay and Dr. Nancy Maryboy and others, The Cosmic Serpent, Its Collaboration with Integrity. And I really like the painting that I showed here, just to really show all the people connected that work together. We all mentioned there's an interconnectedness. And so that even goes for the research that goes on here. And I really like to honor folks such as young Nala here and others who are taking on that, initiative and the opportunities to work in our communities as scientists, as knowledge holders, as artists, to get the word out and to represent community in the ways that we need to. And so just some, samples of some of the work that I've done in the program, not just me, but I have been able to recruit a few others to really begin to think about their science. What can the community do with your data? We talk about research. We talk about having to report back that research, but what does it mean to community? And so it's been a real joy being the research translation coordinator for our Superfund Center there at UNM, where I get to ask the scientists that very question all the time. What are our communities to do with the information you just found through your research, and how do we present that? And so being able to use art to talk about DNA damage and, such things as microplastics. The painting on the right was literally completed yesterday. In the very morning, I finalized some of the touches on this painting that was at the request of some of our researchers who work with the people in Montana on the Crow Reservation. And, the idea of microplastics and how it's been oxidized into the soil and the air through combustion, through the open pit dumping, and talking about how we can protect these communities from these exposures. And so the painting was digitally created using colored pencil-like tools on Procreate. And instead of using accounting ledger paper, I actually used kind of a mock lab notebook sheet, just to also honor the ideas and all the work that's being done in our labs, and all the folks involved in sampling and doing the actual bench science work. And so this type of communication, we also want to make it interactive. We want people to be able to utilize this in the community to continue this education. So others have begun creating diagrams that are a little more easier on the eyes and the ears, no jargon, no difficult words. We're trying to stay at or below the sixth grade comprehension level, reading levels. And so our communities ask us these questions. Are plants safe to eat? Farmers that are gardeners and farmers that live in and around these mining areas continue to ask us, are my vegetables and are my fruits safe for consumption? What about the entire plant? And so we have these diagrams and models that were created by September Benson through UNM. We have color by numbers, we have coloring sheets, we have timeline calendars that we give to the Navajo Birth Cohort Study participants to organize their appointment dates at the different collection times that they need to supply samples. And we're using, imagery that is relatable, recognizable, respectful. And it makes the visits, a lot more intimate and a lot more open to our community and inclusive to our communities. So again, mentioning that we really have to do the work to tailor communications for every community, because not all of these images will work for every community. Only several has it resonated with. And so it could look different from each community to the next. And so again, as mentioned before by Dr. Serrato and the book saying, collaborating with integrity and being able to meet the community with their concerns and bringing them to the table and telling us exactly their experiences. They're the ones living on these lands that we're researching on. We are merely guests. And so being there to listen to community concerns, especially cultural teachings that they may offer us to be ensured that we are respectful of the land and the samples. We're treating samples not separate from the individuals, because in at least the communities here in the Southwest, we don't think individualistic. We have a holistic worldview. We do a lot of things with community, through community. And so trying to honor these ideals and to ensure that we are listening and we are walking the talk, as you could say. So we've been in community using art, my artwork as posters, as handouts, as flyers, brochures, report backs, and other material that we share through different platforms. We go to the commemoration at the Redwater Pond Community, which commemorates the spill, the mine tailing spill there. We are at Laguna Pueblo Feast Days. Majority of my research when it comes to community is when we're actually there. We have so many people coming up to us, telling us their experiences, miners, families of miners, people who live in the communities as the mining was going on, and their experiences is their voice is, I feel like, helps me make these paintings and artworks colorful. Yeah, that's who I am and the work that we do. And I wish I could have shared my entire body of art, but I can also leave the link that shows all the art pieces that have been created since I've begun with CEHP. Thank you.
Thanks, Mallory. It's fantastic that it's not only just becoming like communication, but a bridge between, communities and science and, advocacy. And that work you and Nala do is just amazing. We're going to transition now to the next generation of researchers and turn to our lumberjack colleagues that joined us today. Do we have any presentations? So I let them decide what order they're going to speak in. I don't know if it's going to be alphabetical or going from air to water to soil. And so the three graduate students from Flagstaff are going to discuss their chemistry and analytical chemistry, like I said, on air, water, and soil.
Okay, so hello, everybody. We're very grateful that we were able to attend this meeting today. I am originally from Durango, Colorado, and then I moved to Flagstaff to attend NAU. This last spring, I graduated with my bachelor's in chemistry and a minor in biology. And I am currently in my third semester of my analytical chemistry master's degree. All three of us are in Dr. Janie Ingram's research lab at NAU. So we all kind of do environmental things with a focus on Navajo land. So my specific research, I am investigating the surface soil on an abandoned uranium mine, which Nala showed a great map of, in Cameron, Arizona. Specifically, I am looking at a mine called A&B number 3, which is right near the Cameron Trading Post. And in particular, I am looking at just surface soil of a size of 75 microns and smaller. So very, very fine dust particulates that can very easily be swept up and transported by wind from this mine site. And they're so small to the point where when we're sieving the samples in our lab, we cannot do it in a fume hood because the fume hood will suck all of the dust that we want to analyze up into the ventilation system. So it has been a great experience. I just finished the majority of my sampling in that area. We finished with just shy of 450 soil samples that I will shortly begin all of my analysis on. I have some preliminary results, but I am going to refine all of those results. This mine that I have done research on, it was an open pit mine, operational from 1954 to 1955, where they got almost around 600 tons of uranium ore from this site. And the EPA had estimated around 2,000 cubic yards of mine waste is left on the surface of this site. When you drive up to this area, I don't know if anyone's ever been up there, but it doesn't look like a mine, really. The only indication that there was anything there is lots of signs that are posted around that says danger, radiation, do not dig or like wander around on this site. However, there are no fences. There's only those signs. And when you go onto the mine, and I experienced this the first time that I went to this area, I saw ATV tracks going all over this hilly mine area, right by all of the danger radiation signs. And then when you explore this area more, there are sites nearby and all over where there is a lot of trash that has been dumped. A lot of also very old trash. So stuff has been dumped here for a very long time. There is broken glass all over the site, as well as lots of like shell casings of the people who go out and shoot on this area. So despite it obviously having some dangerous properties to it, people still interact very closely with this mine. And there are some people who have no choice as they live right next to this mine area, some within just a couple hundred feet. And these people have lived there, some of them most likely since before the mine was even built. And so they've been continuously exposed to some very potentially dangerous particles in the air. And so for our research to analyze those soil samples, which apologies, Mallory, I will use some jargon, but we use an Agilent 8900 ICP triple quad, which is an inductively coupled plasma mass spectrometer. Ours specifically is a triple quadrupole for anyone in the audience that might recognize that. It essentially turns a liquid sample into an aerosol and then uses a very hot plasma to break everything up and also knock an electron off of all of the individual elements, thus ionizing. And then the sample is passed through a series of like magnetic fields that can filter out the stuff that you don't care about from the stuff that you do care about. And then a detector will pick up and be able to read how much of different elements and especially different isotopes are in your sample. So that is the main instrument that we use in all of our research, and it's incredibly sensitive. And sometimes it's a little finicky. We're working on some method development with it, but it's going very well. And yeah, that is all my research on the soil. I'll pass it to Justin.
Hello, everyone. My name's Justin Wilbanks. I'm originally from Oklahoma, and I'm a member of the Osage Nation. I ended up in Phoenix about 6 years ago, and then 2 years ago, transferred to NAU after getting my my associate's degree in forensic science. My research is on water analysis on the Western Agency Navajo Nation, specifically working with Tuba City and Cameron, and in the future also working with Coal Mine Canyon. And we're looking for uranium and arsenic, which is pretty well researched and documented. And we're also looking at rare earth elements, which are important because, to my knowledge, there's no established levels of those elements in this region. And also their health effects aren't widely understood. So we really want to get sort of a head start on knowing the levels of these elements. And if they are dangerous, we will have that information already. Eleanor gave a fantastic explanation of the ICP, so I don't have to do that, but I'm using the same instrument in my analysis as well. And most recently, I presented my results at the SACNIS National Diversity in STEM Conference just this past October. One of the big challenges that I faced was scientific communication and presenting my research in a way that's understandable to people outside of the field of chemistry. And so it's very interesting seeing the different methods, especially from Mallory with the art as a way to communicate that information. So I'm very grateful to be here. And that's about all I have.
All righty, guys. Hello. So as you can see, my name is Brian. I'm a fourth semester master's student over at Northern Arizona University. And of course, my work is focused mostly on the Western Agency of the Navajo Nation. And of course, my medium is air analysis. So where does my story begin? Well, let's take it back to the first semester when I sat at a table with my committee, including Dr. Jenny Ingram. So she pitched the idea to me that maybe we should start doing collections in air, maybe switch our mediums from soil and water over to the air part, because there's little to no data in her laboratory, at least, about that facet of the whole issue. So after brainstorming some quick ideas, of course, there was always the pathway of using EPA certified instrumentation and going out there, setting it up, coming back the next day, collecting the filter, kind of the typical protocol. But I kind of pitched her the idea, what if we try to do this on a budget? Because I would love to see a Navajo Nation citizen, or anyone for that matter, to be able to essentially read my thesis and be able to replicate what I did on a budget. Because these EPA certified instruments that actually are speciation samplers of particulate matter, they can run you up from $12,000 to $13,000. And of course, to university, no big deal. They can acquire as many as you need. But to the typical citizen, I can't really imagine that anybody having $12,000 as pocket change. So I went ahead and developed, with the help of my committee, developed this total suspended particulate matter collection device that is composed of a commercial blower and a polylactic acid tip that I actually designed in a 3D printer. And this tip is specialized because it actually holds a MERV 13 filter, which is a very low cost filter that you typically see on the roof of like any sort of building. And I wanted to compare this filter against another low budget filter, which is actually an N95 mask, which is something that we're all pretty well familiar from the pandemic. And just a little fun fact, the 95 and N95 actually means it filters out 95% of total suspended particulate matter. So, which is actually pretty good. But anyway, this device, once I spent quite a bit of time designing this device and actually testing it out in Blackstat to make sure it actually conducts a really nice collection, followed by analysis and preliminary data. Dr. Jenny Ingram gave me the green light and said, okay, let's go to the Navajo Nation. Let's go see what these people think. So our first stop was actually in Cameron, Arizona. And our lovely citizen, Mae Franklin, she's actually on the chapter of Cameron. And she helped me out immensely with this. She was super curious, super happy that I was even like thinking about this as an issue and, helping her out with all this. And to my surprise, when I actually visited her at our house, she actually lives 1 kilometer away from a big remediation site. It's like a phase 2 remediation site. It's super obvious because there's a bunch of hills with so many different colors on them. So that's kind of like really shocking to see that these people out here are living in such close proximity to these abandoned uranium mines. So it's so fulfilling, being able to design something, go out there and provide a potential solution to all this. So, Mae Franklin was super kind, helped me conduct that whole collection. I made a collection manual. She's gone through it, done the help, and then given me back the samples, which then I take back to the lab for analysis. Of course, I'm still undergoing through the analysis, just mostly optimizing my data set before actually reporting back any numbers, because I want to be sure that I've done my part before I make any substantial claims. Along with Cameron, though, I've also done collections in Tuba City and up in the Old Jato, Utah region, right next to Cayenta. And all these places, they have all of their really nice citizens. In Tuba City, I like to thank Brian Zanyazi, who actually helped me out there, who was actually one of our undergraduates who goes to Northern Arizona University. Up in Cayenta, Arizona, I actually had another member of the chapter of Old Jato help me out. And we actually set up the collection device on the roof of the chapter building administration. And again, all these people, all these experiences have been really nice and really beautiful. But one story I would like to pitch as that captured my attention when I was talking to Mae Franklin back in Cameron is when we were just talking about how she lives next to this remediation site, she immediately tells me like, yeah, like every summer when it's getting pretty hot, the youth out here, like they have ATVs and dirt bikes and stuff. They see these big hills out here and they're just going out there and, letting the dirt rip and fly into the sky. And you can easily see she says it's obvious when they're out there because there's just these clouds of dirt just going out in the atmosphere. And then you can obviously imagine when the wind blows, where is that going? Is that going to, this part of the town? Is it going into my house? Is it going to my car? It's going into my water. But yeah, that is all the research I do is just developing that low cost air collection device with a manual and instructions on how to package that, how to handle it, and send it to NAU for me personally to analyze and then hand you back that data.
I could mention one other thing that Jenny's lab has a large focus in is community outreach, and especially education with chemistry in like middle schools and elementary schools. So on several occasions, we've had the opportunity to go out and visit schools and do small like chemistry lessons about water hardness and pH to elementary school and high school students. And me and one other member of Jenny's lab got the opportunity with Mansell Nelson to go out to Window Rock High School and teach some teachers how to instruct their students to take water samples that then we were able to analyze on the ICP-MS. And we were able to give them a lab tour as well. So that's a big focus of Jenny's lab is how do we get more young people invested and excited about chemistry at a really young age.
Thank you. I was going to ask you that question later, and we can totally geek out about mass spectrometry later. And it kind of bringing up the discussion on dust. Dust is a big issue. I remember once, and this may be completely anecdotal or wrong. We were doing some stuff with a 3D printer involving like plaster of Paris, and we had to prove that the plaster of Paris was less than 1% respirable silica for using it in a chemistry lab. And the industrial hygienist said it's kind of a joke because dust in New Mexico is 4 to 6% respirable silica. So we're already challenged in this environment by dust that can kind of compromise some of our health. So now we're going to transition. We're going to hear about community engagement. I think we'll start off with our two colleagues from HUD. I don't remember which one has Sebastian and AJ, and I'm assuming they're on, and we have slides from at least one of them that we're going to share. We could ask who wants to start first. Put your hand up if you want to start first.
I can start first, yeah. Whereas AJ is doing the virtual
Okay,
thumbs
looks like
over.
Sebastian's going first.
Great. And Darlene or Kay, are you able to tee up the slides for me, please? Great. Thank you, Darlene. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Sebastian Dowskieb again from our U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development's Office of Native American Programs. I was asked to join this panel in part to talk a little bit about our office, provide some examples, especially how we interact with the community, Native American tribes, and just ultimately how we engage. I think we try and recognize the spirit of tribal sovereignty and have positive nation-to-nation working relationships. Next slide, please. We are located across the country. While I'm working for our headquarters operations, folks, we have administrators throughout our 6 area offices. So we're not just DC centric, but we're really out in all of the regions across the country. We even have an office in Alaska, and we have a representative in Hawaii as well. Next slide, please. For tribal engagement, some folks in the room may be familiar with EO 14112 with a focus on reforming federal funding and support for tribal nations. As part of that executive order, we have new tribal set-asides, both through our Choice Neighborhood Planning grants, our Continuum of Care grants, which focus on homelessness and reducing chronic homelessness, and through our preservation and reinvestment initiative for community enhancement price. Next slide, please. We're also working with our Tribal Intergovernmental Advisory Committee. This has been formed a couple years back. The photos that you see are of visits to DC. And really, we've nominated and have a variety of tribal members from across our country. Their main job in helping to support our office is really to share their experiences on the ground, their experiences, especially as our focus areas, really are working with tribal housing departments and also with tribally designated housing entities. And so those are really our main customers that you could say throughout the nation is those 2 focus areas. And so our TAC committee for short really helps us with policy development. What should we be doing? What should we be focusing on? Are there any burdens that we can help reduce? Is there anything that we can help streamline? Is there anything that we can make more efficient for our tribal housing departments and for our tribally designated housing entities, as there are the recipients of our grants, both formula and competitive? Next slide, please. For our budget last year, we had over $1 billion for the Indian Housing Block Grant. We've seen in the House and the Senate for fiscal year 25, appropriations bills that each, give further increases. Currently, across the federal sphere, we're under a continuing resolution, meaning that, we have a budget that's limited in terms of the scope of the number of days and months. However, interim funding is still available. So we are still moving things forward under this continuing resolution. I think the bottom line, if you've never been involved with our federal agency, is that through these housing departments and these housing entities, there's a lot of flexibility. We're not the ones deciding that funding, has to be used for a certain project. Our overall goal is we provide a blank canvas, and really the rules around that blank canvas say that funding has to be directed towards low and moderate income tribal members, both individual members, families, veterans, seniors, and youth. Within that, there's a lot of flexibility that tribes can use funding for infrastructure projects, water, sewer, for oftentimes the rehabilitation of affordable housing units, in part the construction of new affordable housing units, and even for economic development projects, such as one example is a chocolate factory. So there's a wide variety of uses, but it's really those housing departments and those housing entities that get to decide what their priorities are. And of course, we want to be respectful that priorities may vary across tribes. Next slide, please. I want to provide some examples, as to what does this all mean, kind of illustrate the different uses of our funding, and how we're working in partnership with various communities. The first example that you see really is a showcase of our Indian Housing Block Grant through the Yakama Nation. What you see here is a development that totals about 46 units. And there's been a wide variety of funding sources. In fact, 3 funding sources specific from our agency and other sources such as tax credits. Oftentimes, building out housing can be illustrated through it's a moving puzzle piece. A lot of different funding is involved, and it certainly takes a lot of different sources and time and energy, to build that out. But we start really early on, asking what the community needs, and then they can come to us with their proposal and apply for funding. So in this case, it was developed on an 18-acre site, and there was about $5 million in Indian Housing Block Grant competitive funds that were awarded. Next slide, please. Here we have the Swinomish Reservation. You have a beautiful community that's illustrated of single-family homes utilizing our competitive funds. Next slide. Followed by, we have in Alaska through the Native Council, they were able to develop 3 fourplexes and 33 single-family homes. The total cost of construction was around $2.3 million, with about $600,000 being utilized by our Indian Community Block Grant and $1.7 million from our Indian Housing Block Grant. Additionally, ONC has constructed new roads for the subdivision with support from a previous grant from fiscal year 2018. Next slide. We have here the San Felipe Pueblo, who is working to expand affordable housing options for local families. And they've used, again, a combination of our funds along with leveraging tribal funds. Specifically, their housing authority has constructed 7 new homes on sites scattered throughout the reservation. Families move in and, have the ability to have a permanent place to call home, a safe place, and that's something that we really are proud of. Next slide. Lastly, want to showcase an example. We also have a block grant specific to Hawaii. It's called the Native Hawaiian Housing Block Grant. Here you see a groundbreaking phase 2, 80 new homes, are currently in the process of being created. Next slide. We're talking about all of these examples, but I think it's important, where does indoor air quality come in? And there's a lot of different ways that, again, tribes can use our funds. In all of the block grants that were mentioned, what components to help increase good indoor air quality, help to reinforce that, help to promote that. Our funding can be used when building out new units and building out existing housing units. It can be used, for more efficient HVAC systems. When you look at, kind of the building seal, the building envelope, it can be used for added insulation. It can be used for fresh air ventilation systems. There's also been a focus lately with new developments on using low VOC paint and products. So there's a lot of uses of our funds when you go in, either through a new build or again through a renovation, where our funds can come in to help improve indoor air quality. Also want to mention radon as a focus area of our agency, but more on that from my colleague AJ. And with that concludes my presentation. Thank you again for inviting me.
Thank you, Sebastian. Now we can switch to AJ now. I think that last slide was really teeing up his talk with it for us.
Hi, my name is AJ Salkowski. Very sorry I couldn't be there today, but very thankful that I'm able to speak with everyone and listen to the presentations earlier as well. I work for the Office of Lead Hazard Control and Healthy Homes at HUD. We're based out of headquarters office in DC. But prior to that, I was living in Anchorage, Alaska, but working in many villages around the state on healthy homes issues. So I'll get into a little bit of that later. But one thing to go back to that people were talking about in an earlier session of words that they would use to describe what's a key to working in a community, and humor is a big one for me, and in fact self-deprecating humor. I'm a white guy with a big black beard that rolls into indigenous communities, and everybody wants to make the joke, and I get it. I like to make the joke too, so I think when they see I can laugh at myself, I tend to do a little bit better there in town. But that aside, so what do I do for HUD that helps tribes? My office back in 2018 started doing a Healthy Homes production grant. Production is a little bit of a misnomer because we're working on existing housing, but trying to do healthy homes upgrades to those homes. So a lot of remediation on existing housing. The grants are focused on the 8 principles of a healthy home. So even though a tribe may say, we really need roofs redone, we have a lot of leaking roofs, or we may need new heating devices because we have a lot of heating devices, we encourage the tribe or the TDHE to go in and do a full home assessment of all of the 8 principles to see what else might be going on in there. Because like it was said earlier, the home is a system. If you want to go in and just fix one thing, for instance, we want to fix ventilation. Okay, well, now did you set the pressure off in the house to where you're going to be backdrafting heating devices? Just a small example. But looking at everything, they can still determine what their priorities are when they go into the home of what they want to fix with the money that they have. But it just kind of gives a better overall picture of what might be going on in the house. My job is to provide the technical assistance. I have a long background in doing healthy housing with tribes, and so I do my best from afar, but also rely on the experienced housing folks and sometimes environmental health folks they're in the community that really get to see firsthand, because that's really the best way to know what's going on, is to experience it yourself. You all know that, but I have to say it anyway. Aside from that, I have a few other duties that I do, and some of them I'm voluntold to do, and some of them I volunteer to do. One of which is the radon policy kind of rollout that Sebastian mentioned earlier. This is going to be a tricky one, but we're going to get through it. Radon is going to be difficult for an office like mine, because we were developed as a lead hazard control office. And when you go into a home and you abate it, there's no more lead in the house. You're not going to go buy lead paint at the store and then paint something again. So you kind of look at a unit and you say, all right, well, we check that off the list. And radon is obviously not like that. Radon is something that you're going to want to test for every few years, even if you are coming up with negative results in those tests. It's very likely, or not likely, it's very possible that you might not have it and your neighbor might. It's very possible that some event can happen, like an earthquake, and a bunch of foundations get rocked. And then all of a sudden, the radon test that you took 2 months ago may have zero validity on what's actually going on in that house. So we need to continue to look at radon as a problem, knowing that there's a lot of other big problems that are really urgent, and radon exposure is more of a long-term exposure kind of illness. It sort of captures what we've talked about with a lot of these things, though, of the chemistry of the home. If you're a smoker and you're exposed to radon, you're more likely to get cancer. There's a synergistic effect with radon and other indoor air contaminants that can make people sick. And so we want to start making people aware of this, trying to get the problem out of the house before it becomes more of a problem, and make it part of the environmental review process before we go in and remediate homes, is to test for that radon and make sure that if there are high levels, above that 4 picocuries, that we're doing a radon remediation of that unit as well. So a little bit about my background and how I think this group is so great. And I'll try to do this in just a minute, but I'm kind of one of those jack of all trades, but master of none people. And I'm kind of a hub of what a lot of you are doing or have done. Malcolm Gladwell, if any of you have read him, they call him connectors. Like, I'm not the guy you want to come into your house and fix it, but I can come and look at your house and tell you what's wrong. I'm not the guy that you want treating you at the hospital, but I have a pretty good idea when I hear you cough what's going on in your chest. And I know who to tell you to go to. So I've spent a lot of time over the last 15 or more years. Wow, I'm getting old. Brainstorming and presenting all over the country with Gillian, training on air quality and indoor air quality with Manso, doing health research, getting IRB approvals with CDC and the Alaska Area Institutional Review Board, and looking at how respiratory health is affected by indoor air quality through medical chart reviews and through questionnaires with families. And I worked at ANTHC, which is the Tribal Health Consortium that basically acts as IHS in the state of Alaska. And I've worked with pediatricians, and I've worked on EPA grants, and now I work at HUD, and I've worked with you folks at NAU. And I really want to make sure that I express how much gratitude I have for the work that you do, how much I respect the work that you do. And while it doesn't always seem like it on a day-to-day basis, the people in that room right there have made a lot of positive impact on housing in tribal communities since before I started and since I've started. And I just want to thank everybody for that as well.
Thanks, AJ. Moving on, we're going to hear from Roy with Red Feather. I'm really excited to hear what you have to say. I've been looking forward to it.
Hope I don't put you to sleep. Yad that means goodwill to you. Yad she ya royally hastings is it? Not otene kachini. Aces sana bitni that's a car. I don't since the car ni twitted nation nalle. Ashi he should say. Without it and my name is Roy Hosteen, and I live up in Upper Fruitland here. I work with Red Feather Development Group out of Flagstaff. And I work from home here on the New Mexico side. Red Feather has, I've been employed with them for over 6 years now, after I retired from mining. So it was a good find, something that I came across and I do enjoy. Now I say Red Feather's mine when I talk to my coworkers. So, but we have, during the COVID, we have made hand wash stations. And we also have worked with Global Source with the thermal panels. And we have HEPA filters that we give out to residents because of people with respiratory issues. And then we also have heating units such as wood stove and then solar panels, solar furnace. And then we also make ramps and then a program for aging in place. If an elderly needs a walk-in shower, their tubs pulled out, then we can get a contractor to put in a shower for them. So it has been, and it is a worthwhile endeavor. I believe in Red Feather and the people that are there. But first of all, I would like to thank all of you individually and say thank you for all that you have done for the Native people. We have been we have census numbers. So my thought is census number is our POW numbers. So how do you control the prisoners? Give them just enough. But with people such as yourselves, you are not just giving a helping hand, but giving a hand up to people that are in need. So I came across this Red Feather and I started working with the Stove Exchange Program here in New Mexico side. Next slide. Oh, shoot. Okay, the program was to pick out old stoves, inefficient stoves, and replace them with new ones. So I had to develop this, and we had to get first applicants, second contact the applicants. Third was to have a home assessment or home audit, and then change out do the actual work. The first stage was getting the applicant. People are reluctant on the nation because they think this is another tribal help. And it's going to take forever for somebody to come over and say, so first thing I do is when I go over to the home, I introduce myself and I introduce my clan to establish kinship. And then I say, I'm not with the tribe. I'm not with the government. I'm here to help. I'm with a nonprofit. And they sort of relax and they let down their guards. And then the other thing I come across is people, I talk to folks and say, we haven't ever heard of this Red Feather or this program. So lack of information and people not being aware. Once we get that moving and contacting the applicant by phone, if they have good service, and locating homes by using GPS coordinates. Either I have to drive out to their home to locate them, or I'd go around the neighborhood trying to say, Do you know so-and-so? Where did they live? Then they say, go down this way. Once you go past those rocks, well, you've gone too far. You have to come back. There's probably a tire along the road. So turn left there. So it was one of the problems that I came across. So the best thing I found was locating them by coordinates using the GPS, and then I can hand those numbers over to our contractors. The third step was grouping these homes, since we are spread out way out there and in Timbuktu and all from one hill to the next. So I had to group the homes so we just don't go to this one home and then take an hour drive to another. So I was trying to, we grouped the home and then schedule them, make sure that, because some of these homes, the homeowners, they had to go to see their doctors or whatever elements that they had to go, or they had to go to town to get groceries. And that was the only time that they could go get their ride. And then during that time, once I scheduled them and I get there, I tell them about the program. I made sure that they had a stove, a wood coal burning stove. If not, because this was an exchange program that we were running for this particular program. But some were reluctant to give up their old stove. So this is handmade by so-and-so, in remembrance of them, I would like to keep it. I would have to say, I'm sorry, but this is a program that we have to take your stove because it is a hazard in your home. And then we check their appliance, their oven range, their water heater. 40% of the homes we had to purchase a new oven range. I've had this lady says, oh, I got the stove alongside the road. I cleaned it up and I checked it out and it works fine. And it was, the carbon monoxide reading was so high that we said, you cannot use it. And I had a family, a couple, an elderly, who we were waiting for them at their home. Their kids let us into their home and they came back and we told them about their oven range and their water heater. And the contractor told us, you're going to have these symptoms. You're going to have nausea. You're going to have constant headache, sleepiness. You can be groggy. And the two elderly couple look at each other and say, that's why we go to the hospital. We just came back from the hospital. And they're not aware of these things. So, but luckily we went in and purchased new oven range. So these are from different fundings from private donation to grants that we get. And then we have mold issues in the bathroom also, which it causes a respiratory issue. And we just can't say, I'm sorry, we can't help you, but we want the homeowners to be part of the program. So I say, we're going to buy the cleaning supplies and then the painting supplies, everything you're going to need. So then we can come back in and service your home. So I've had only one person that didn't do that. She says, I can't find nobody. My son's here, but he won't do anything. So, and then the problem with roof leaks also. So we had another program that we have. It's called direct service, where we ask the homeowner to find somebody, or if they can do it with themselves. I have this elderly lady that she says, I can figure it out. I used to work on a home long time ago. So she figured out the material and got a quote, and we bought her the material, and she had somebody else come in and fix it. So it's taking ownership of their home. The fourth stage is having the actual contractor come in, pull the old stove and put in a new one. These are EPA efficient stoves. And I had to explain to them if it's a catalyst burn or a secondary burn. And the type of wood that and the type of firewood they should be using. Am I getting behind there? Okay, cool. Thank you. Now I'm lost. Okay, and so I tell them about the type of firewood they should use. And when we give them a moisture meter, and we tell them, to take this down to those folks that are selling firewood. Stab it real hard. If there's numbers on there is higher than this, don't use it. Or ask for a deal because the firewood is still wet. You cannot use it for that season. So we give them those equipment. And then of course, we have the contractor install a new, make sure that they are their oven range are now using propane orifices instead of natural gas. Because some of the homes were like that also, that it says, I just got it last year. And here it's the natural gas. It's not, so it's a bad burn. So we had our contractor. Gets me all choked up. So we have our contractor clean that out and make sure that it's running properly. And then same way with the water heater. And then we replace broken windows, patch up the walls, the interior walls, and look at the exterior walls, see where we can work with, weather-wise the doors and the windows. And then, like I said, we educate the folks there. These are elderly folks that aren't fluent in English. So I sat there and talked to them in Navajo and said, this is how it burns, and you're gonna burn your wood and then you're gonna burn the smoke. And I said, this is something new that they've come across. It's gonna have your house is gonna be a lot warmer. Even though it's a slower burn, you're gonna have that heat is gonna be staying in since the house has been weatherized. And we put extra insulation in the attic. The windows, all the cracks have been sealed up. So you're gonna, and I've had people, elderly folks just break down. He said, we haven't ever had help like this before. And some of them are so appreciative that they're like, I'm gonna feed these folks here that help me out. And they say, so how much do I pay? I said, it's free of charge. So we are here to help. So they are, sometimes they just move me in a way that I have to be excited to go from the initial get-go. Said, oh, I've got money for you. Let's get this done for your home. So that's the inspiration that the homeowner gives me. And of course, we dispose of their old wood stove, take it back to the salvage yard. And then the last thing is the ash that they have from their wood stove. Tell them about the proper disposal of it, and don't just leave it outside. I tell them to tell their kids, their grandkids, don't just leave it outside. And so it's just more of an education and reaffirming what they already know. So it has been a good endeavor. Like I said, we recycle the metal. And then we have service over 364 with that program. And right now we are with New Mexico, Navajo Nation side, that we are working with the energy audit, helping families with their utilities, bringing their utility costs down. So Red Feather's mission statement, I like that we envision a world of healthy and safe housing. So that's I like that, and I continue with that. So my name is Roy Lee Hosteen, and I work for Red Feather. Thank you.
So finishing with community engagement, that was fantastic. I mean, so knowing that Roy Lee Hosting will come knock on your door and help you out and give you a helping hand. So now I guess we can open it for questions. The virtual audience can't see what a full packed house we have, but I mean, on some levels, I think it'd be fantastic if the panel starts asking each other questions. Like Nala could ask our friends down the table, what's your favorite chemistry class? But I don't know if that's going to go anywhere. So I don't know if the panelists has questions for each other, or we open it up to the floor, or I have some. Oh, but
Would you like to ask a question?
I would. Thank you, Nala, for allowing me that. I want to capitalize on something that the HUD folks said, and AJ, hi, it's good to see you. I see a little bit of gray in your beard. But as you pointed out, HUD funds can be used for indoor air quality, and I fully understand that. However, it's the tribal housing offices that are making the decisions. And as a person advocating for healthy homes, do you have any advice on how to encourage? And I know it's got to be a balance because they've got a lot of other things, although we know it all connects, but how we help the tribal housing offices make good decisions towards healthy homes, because they're the ones making those decisions.
Yes, and yes, there's definitely some gray in this beard. Um, so having been an airhead in my previous life and looking at everything through a lens of indoor air quality and in housing and even, you know, some projects up on the north slope of Alaska where we're looking at how some development might be affecting indoor air quality. I got pretty good at twisting every problem in the house into an indoor air quality problem in one way or another. It really, if your math is is mathing correctly that day, I think you can do it. You know, if you have a pest problem, that's an air quality problem. If you have leakage problems, that's a mold and moisture problem. That's an air quality problem. If you have a heating device that isn't working correctly, air quality problem. If your ventilation's not being used or it's not working correctly, air quality problem. So I think the way that I would probably go about it in those cases is to say what you're doing is probably already trying to improve indoor air quality, whether you say you are or not. And here's some other indoor air quality upgrades that are pretty inexpensive that we can do in addition to that.
Thank you, AJ.
First, I have a question. First of all, just great panel. Just really appreciate everything you're all doing. So Roy, my question to you is, if you're free next spring, I'd love to be able to have you come to Washington, DC when we do a Hill Day for Healthy Homes. And we go around to the different representatives. So for them to hear some of your work would be fantastic. Did I say hi, AJ? Hi. And Nala, if you get out of school and come, it would be great to have you too. And then AJ, this is for you. EPA, if you're still listening, there should be a red feather in at least 2 regions of every state. Okay, like permanent funding for the kind of work they do. They're different, ITEP and THHN, workforce development and training, but a program that goes straight into the home. And yes, we all try to go into homes and do interventions, but you exist to do kind of wraparound services. So please pass that on to your boss, and I'm sure you'll have no problem in the next 4 years getting that funded, right? So anyway, I'll be in touch. So, love to have you out.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I have a couple questions too for a lot of people. Sebastian, I didn't know whether those block grants had a a match, a tribal match, or they just don't have a match at all? Just out of curiosity, because I live in EPA world and oftentimes there's a match.
Yeah, it depends on the funding source, but some have percentage matching and some, a match is encouraged. Sometimes that can strengthen an application. But oftentimes, I think the bottom line, what we see for our funding being used, versus a couple decades ago, is that HUD funds across the board, no longer tend to be the only funding source for the rehabilitation of housing, or to address some of AJ's great examples, right? That you can pretty much tie in a lot to indoor air quality, especially when it comes to housing rehab. And so oftentimes you see a blending or a mixture of funds, right? A couple examples I used had 3 HUD funds. Sometimes you need tax credits. Sometimes you need gap financing. Sometimes, the housing departments, go to the tribal leaders to ask for funding as sort of seed funding to start and to develop a plan, or if there's any reviews that need to happen beforehand. And so, certainly it takes a lot of different puzzle pieces. We just are one part of that puzzle piece.
All right, great, thanks. Mallory.
Can I
was
say
won-
something on that really fast too, please? I'm sorry to
Oh,
interrupt.
go ahead.
With our Healthy Homes funding, that is one of the rare cases where other funds that come from the federal government can be used as match, with the caveat. So like IHBG and ICDBG, because they're not technically considered tribal funds, or they're considered tribal funds and not considered federal funds once they're out the door, they can actually be used as match for our Healthy Homes program.
Okay, well, that's always good to know when you can use those match funds that you got from somewhere else. Yeah. Okay, thank you. And yeah, AJ, I love your beard. My nephew has a beard that's very similar, and it's always just so interesting. Mallory,
I like to say I have a comment section on my face.
Oh, yeah. I was wondering if you shared your artwork that you did, or I wasn't sure, you whether other people could use it or anything like that.
Yeah, I do like sharing it, just with the basic artist credit, and our credit to our funding grants that did fund the artwork is also very crucial. They're funded by what 3 centers, the artwork. So I do like to share, especially the coloring sheets that have been digitized from the actual paintings. They're very specific to our communities. Those with Navajo, Pueblo, and Cheyenne River and Crow. I even have artwork for the Algonquin speaking tribes, the people of the Dawn and the Atlantic coast, and several places. But I'm very open to collaborating with centers and creating specifically for these places. But we do have packets we share, and I can have those available as PDFs.
Okay, well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's just a thought, working for a tribe, you're always trying to be creative.
Just want to also add that in this new day and age, especially during COVID-19, artists had like one of the biggest call outs there ever was for us to be a part of public health and any movement in reaching out to communities. So I just want to encourage all the centers, EPA level, everyone, down to, Red Earth, to reach out to your local artists and help creating material, because it's really crucial that it's recognizable by someone they know, someone that they appreciate already. And it's something I encourage.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that, because it is important. And a lot of times I'm not sure whether we have funding for it, but oh well. let's see, yeah, students, from NAU. So the tribe has a TSP program and we've been, analyzing, air samples since about 2012, on and on. And so I'm really interested to see what kind of results you get. So are those shareable, do you think? Or I don't know. I mean, so that's just something that I'd be interested in. Yeah, and I think the ICP sample analysis for uranium is a lot cheaper than we're doing radiochemical analyses and it costs like $1,000 for each sample. So, yeah.
The university is glad to take your money and do it for you.
Right. And Brian, I spoke to, we had a Zoom call with another professor at NAU, and he had he was telling us it was like a similar type sample system, except it was like with a leaf blower or something like that.
You're speaking with Dr. Ketterer.
Yeah, Dr.
Yeah.
Ketter. Yeah.
Dr. Ketter, he's an amazing guy.
Yeah.
Me and him bounce, ideas off of each other all the time. And it's kind of how I landed with 3D printing.
Mm.
Was more or less his idea. Because he said that, well, if this original prototype isn't really something, maybe something even more portable could be used. And he did show me that leaf blower that he kind of put together.
Right, yeah.
But as far as the data goes,
Mhm.
I'm sure there's no issues with sharing this data with you.
Okay.
The moment, of course, we get it all finalized.
Of course. Yeah. I understand that. Yeah, and Nala, thank you so much for being a representative at your age level and for this community. I'm also on another national level radon committee, the National Radon Program work group. And we're always trying to get youth involved in radon, and it's really good to have a representative. So thank you.
Do you have someone?
Please go for it.
Can I ask a quick question to all of you? So on the topic of building the next generation, I am curious, especially I'm gonna start with Nala. What could you see that we could do better in schools and in universities to enable people like you to make your dreams come true? What do you recommend?
I recommend like whoever, like if I wanted to become a doctor, I would like someone who is a doctor to come to the school and show them like what you need to learn and like the simple things that they can learn to continue to love their dream and want to become it. Thank you.
Loud and loud and clear. I think that's our biggest thing when communities ask us. They share us their stories, but in the end, they always round up their conversations by saying, so how are you gonna teach our kids this? How are you gonna come back? How are you gonna bring this back and share? And so, we would definitely like to see some kind of funding that we could set aside, especially in our centers and our programs that do help, not just at the college level, but the high school, the middle school, the elementary school. It's like, we want them at this level too. We want them to learn about our work and you know, how they can help their community starting this young. I mean, geez, it's happening. So we need to support that and, you know, harness it.
I'd like to add, I think it's amazing that Nala is doing this at her age, and I really wish that I had taken the opportunity to do something similar when I was younger. But I think like access to mentorship and like exposure to scientific community at a younger age, I think is something that could really help in that regard. Like when I went to SACNAS this last October, that was my first exposure to like the scientific community as a whole. And I think had I had that exposure before, I could have been more set up to know what I wanted to do like when I was younger. So
And one thing that NAU has been participating in, I don't know how widespread it is, but it's called the CARE program. Sorry, it's the Cultural and Academic Research Experience. And it allows high school students, or it facilitates high school students being introduced into chemistry and biology labs, and I think just a lot of STEM labs in general. And I will say, like, I wish I had that opportunity when I was in high school, because I got my first chemistry lab experience my junior year of college, when I was already most of the way through my chemistry degree and I hadn't had any research lab experience. And over the summer, I got to be a mentor for the CARE program for a high school student. And he was incredible, and he's still working with our lab right now. And so it was just great to see that he like kind of dived into this research, and through this opportunity found something that he really enjoyed to do. That it can be hard in high school to go into college and they'll be like, oh, what do I want to do? So I think also, like Nala said, is just having more of like a knowledge base of what is even out there that I could enjoy doing, that I think is really beneficial.
Yeah, I agree. The CARE programs have been really good, except they are summer and limited. And just not to dampen enthusiasm, because I totally agree with getting into schools and making those experiences possible. And prior to No Child Left Behind, many of us were in schools with coordinated curricula. We had a whole curriculum that went through every class that was taught in middle school and going into high school, that was in schools all over Washington, all over New Mexico, and many other places, because it got published through NIEHS. And No Child Left Behind came in, and all the teachers came up and said, we are really sorry. We love doing this. Our students love it, but we now have to teach to the test, or we do our students a disservice. And so it really is how we teach people, and whether we teach people in school to think or whether we teach to a test. And unless we can get around it, I think we're left with these kinds of summer programs as the only alternative. And Nala, I totally agree with you. I think it's the greatest idea, but I'm not sure that it's something that can be done for at least another 4 years. It takes a big change to get back to that. So I'm really happy to see you doing what you're doing.
Can I throw a comment in on that really fast, please?
She's skipping school to be here, and she had to do her homework while she was waiting for her turn to be on the platform talking about Nala. But I do want to say I agree with what Johnny was talking about, because I was teaching in the school and doing very different things, including requiring all my students to spend 8 hours, this is their semester exam, with a professional working in STEM. All the other teachers, for whatever reasons, hated it. They thought that was horrible, that would be their final exam. But I now have students from that time period that are principals and CEOs and pharmacists and surgeons, and I'm convinced that some of my efforts contributed to that. And I was run out of town because they didn't like that approach. But I guess that's the advantage of having some grandkids is I get to influence them a little bit, but I'm not a doctor, so I got to find a doctor to line her up with what Nala wants. But meanwhile, she's learning a lot of good environmental science that will help her be a better doctor. So we'll find that doctor that'll be willing to work with you in the future. And I think AJ had something to add.
Yeah, being another generation, or maybe even two removed from Nala, who my 12-year-old self wouldn't hold a candle to. I'm so impressed with her ability to speak. The thing about science is that there's so much of it out there, and you never know when it might hit you. Coming from somebody who was pre-law and only took astronomy as their only science class in 4 years of college, I ended up in Alaska running air monitors and looking at how different things in the air were affecting people's health. You just kind of never know. Sometimes you get lucky and you fall into it, but I'm not even sure if somebody had come into school and showed me how to run a monitor when I was in high school or college, that it would have clicked the way that it did. When I got to be out in the real world and see how my work was affecting real people. So I think that's something to keep in mind, is that, yeah, it's great to get people started early and get them into the sciences early. And in no way am I trying to dissuade that, but there's going to be a big group of people out there that could be good at stuff and they don't even know what it is yet. And they can be recruited in their 20s or in their 30s or in their 40s to go out and do this meaningful work. And it doesn't have to be your dream from the time that you're 7 years old. You can make a big impact later in life.
Thanks, AJ. Dr. Ferguson, do we have any online questions?
Not for this panel. However, Dr. Janicki, Darlene suggested that we
We're
look
not
at
real doctors, Nala. Just
Doctor. No. Okay, Mike. Yeah. Anyway, okay, Mike. So yeah, Darlene had a great suggestion. She said, why don't we look at some of the questions that we posed as guiding questions for this panel? And so I was thinking of, listening to Nala, but listening to Brian, who's sitting right next to me, and others, but especially the two of them, and thinking about Mansell's first panel on monitoring air and water, kind of bringing it back to that. So, Nala mentioned what appears to be really a low cost method for radon monitoring, getting that into communities, educating community members about how to operate, how to use those detection technologies. And Brian talked about his graduate research and developing a low cost air monitor. So I'm wondering, throwing a challenge out there, and maybe there are other low cost, high quality methods to monitor air and water out there could be developed, and getting that into the community and training community members how to operate it, and having them take ownership of collecting that data and understanding how to make good use of that data. So it's kind of a long-winded question, and I think Roy also, what Red Brothers doing is brought forth great examples of that. So maybe it's kind of most of the panelists, so they want to try to touch on that. How can we work with community members? Try to bring low-cost methods for monitoring air and water, but then monitoring is not enough. How to then take action on that data collected.
Yeah,
Brian.
Yeah, so I'll try to put my 2 cents in here. But yeah, I think that's the low cost efforts to sort of tackle these issues I definitely resonates with me. Of course, I mean, it's my project, but aside from that, I mean, just my own personal experience. So I'm a first generation student, and I'm actually Mexican American, and my parents both came from Mexico. And I actually grew up kind of like in the middle of, like, I guess you could say, the poverty range. So my dad really taught me and my brothers on how to be very self-sufficient, how to essentially put things together when you don't have the proper tools. It's kind of like makeshift construction ideas on whatever's broken around here. Because of course you don't have the finances to kind of support that. So having that kind of ideas from the beginning and then taking it to like the uranium mining sites here is super impactful. But of course, after obtaining the data from these lower cost monitors, what would you do with this data? Let's say it is insignificant. You can even say this data, assuming that it's very significant, you can treat it as evidence, right? I mean, it's something you've collected from out in the environment, and it's something you've been observing. I believe that you could probably take this evidence to the proper officials and try and get some funding pulled in for maybe accelerating the remediation process, or maybe even providing alternatives to whatever existing remediation processes are taking place.
I would say, fortunately for me, water sampling is relatively straightforward. So one thing that we have done is we went out with a community member to find the wells that we were sampling from. And after we sampled, we left some of the sampling containers with him because he offered to take samples at a later date, and so we could compare, see how the concentrations are changing across time. So with samples that are easy, sample prep like water samples, I believe that that's a possible angle.
Unfortunately, I don't know of very many low-cost soil analytical methods. I don't know very much about it, but I've heard about handheld X-ray fluorescence analyzers that would definitely be a lot cheaper than an ICP-MS. However, maybe not at the cheap enough cost for individual like households to have. However, maybe like a community lab, like a volunteer community lab sort of thing, where they could have one of these devices, maybe even a low-cost air monitor thing that they would regulate, that would make, I guess, community testing a lot more accessible. But as far as, I mean, at least for elemental soil sampling, there's, if you want to get really low detection limits, there's not really much that I know of for making that affordable or really accessible outside of like a research lab. Although if like NAU collaborates a lot with people who live nearby who are interested in having some of their soil or water tested just for some of their just their own curiosity. That depends on the sample size and things like that. But sometimes we're able to help people out, and it's not a part of a study, but just to help out someone who is curious, or maybe your home or property or whatever would be fall into the perfect jurisdiction of somebody's master's or PhD project, and they would be very happy to have another volunteer to contribute to their research. So that could be another way that people could get into or get some of their stuff in homes analyzed for
Well,
cheaper.
I might take it to the next step, and like, if there's a possibility to move the testing into like a high school chemistry curriculum. And so you're working, I mean, not throughout the suggestion of having students work with, let's say, experts. And so having the regional sampling done at the high school chemistry curriculum, giving the high school students experience, access to, let's just say, some pretty cool chemistry. And just kind of almost like, I mean, not quite an internship, but just like, here's real life chemistry.
And I mean, we were able to do that with the Window Rock High School students. We were able to instruct the teachers on how to teach the kids how to take water samples and the importance of testing their water, And then when the high school students came into the lab for a tour of Janny's research lab, we were running the ICP-MS, analyzing their samples at the same time during their tour, and they were able to see that. But it would be very cool to establish, like, every year this class do a field trip and like go see chemistry labs. So that would definitely be very cool.
I will let Janie know that you volunteered. And
Hopefully
Nala's been
graduation's
communicating with her mother and said that she had a question for me. So you want to say your question or anyway, maybe I'm confusing you too much, but I understood Nala had a question about low cost radon testing, and the kits that she used were actually free. The vendor donated them, and then I spread them out, and they offered me 20,000 kits, but my boss was concerned about storing the boxes in our lobby. He thought that would be unsightly to have cardboard boxes in our workspace. I think they would have been great because kids could have come drawn pictures on them, and anyway. But yeah, I actually got those for free. And they're all gone now, Nala, but I'll buy some more for you. I do want to mention though, low cost air sensors now. I've been in detection technologies for over 30 years, but recently we refer to them as low cost sensors. And I bought a PM sensor some 20 years ago. It cost me $5,000, and I was very happy to have that. We're now buying them for $40. So dramatically lower cost and low enough that individual homeowners might consider getting them. And in fact, Red Feather is buying 50 of them that we're going to be distributing the first week of December, and I'm going to do a training with them. So there are lower cost technologies now available. And at least in the air quality arena, I'm certainly taking advantage of that. And that's part of why I can give students like Nala sensors, because I didn't give any of my students the $5,000 one. They didn't even get to touch it. But now I hand them out almost like candy. So we have changed things recently because of advancing technologies. And I think there's great opportunities for helping create more awareness of what I call seeing the unseen. So that's something I'm very interested in, and happy to partner with anybody who wants to work on that.
I have a question for Miss Eleanor. You said that you held chemistry class like toward Winter Rock High School. Would it be possible if you could do middle school classes as well?
Probably. Ultimately, I am not in charge of whether that's a yes or a no. But it is, I don't see why it would not be a possibility. I mean, it's very interesting stuff, and especially if there are middle school students who are very interested in seeing like a research chemistry lab, then I don't see a drawback to, I don't see a downside to getting you guys into a lab. So I know we can communicate with Mansell as well, and Janny, and I don't know, see if we can figure something out.
I think we have to wrap up. I was hoping we'd have a couple minutes for like any final remarks, but I don't know if we have time for.
Mike, maybe really quick, does someone just post a comment relevant to what we're just talking about? So
What is that, Charles?
Oh, about low cost monitoring technology.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Why don't you tell us it?
Well,
Sorry,
I
we're
want
getting
to
punchy.
be respectful for one of our attendees. We still have some people listening in this and held on the entire day. I'm like so impressed with them. So Franklin Tellis says the Nez Perce tribe runs a really good air quality program. They have several FRM air quality monitors to gauge the air for agricultural burns, but they also co-locate
with low-cost purple air sensors at community libraries. The librarians are quite effective at using the EPA fire and smoke map. And he said I would refer to Solo Green and Jonah Bulafentis, education specialists and air quality specialists respectively. So
That's a
Wanted
great
to-
comment. Yeah,
a
thank
great
you,
comment.
online.
Thank you
person.
for Franklin for posting that.
And think about it, like COVID tests, they went, I don't know, $10 maybe. So, I mean, there's opportunities there. So I think we need to wrap this up. I'd like to thank everybody online, in person. I'd really like to thank Darlene and Kay for like keeping things going in the background. Chris Rosen is not here, but Chris Rosen set all this up last night for us. Him and the San Juan Community College have been fantastic. I mean, I hope we can come back and continue this dialogue. I think that's all I have to say. So we're gonna wrap things up, and I'm gonna let Mansell introduce his granddaughter again. And she's going to close out our town hall meeting. So thank you, everybody, again. It's been a fantastic day, and take cookies.
For many years, I have asked students, what are you interested in? Because I'm a career counselor slash scientist slash anything else you need. And some kids, of course, would say, well, I'm not sure what I want to do. And I'd say, I'd empathize with them and I'd say, well, I'm still trying to figure it out too. But about 13 years ago, 12 and a half years ago, this person entered my life. And I figured out what I've really been wanting to do is be a grandpa. So Noel is going to help us finish off the conference with a couple of songs. One of them is about education, encouraging us all to advance our education. And then the other one is about the beauty way, which we want everyone to walk in beauty.
Yate anotso. That means hi again. Thank you for letting me close out with some songs. The first song that I like to sing is the education song, and the songs that I sing are by Talaba Bigay, and all of her most of her songs that she makes are on YouTube. Hey, young, hey, young, we are not young, we are not young, we are not young, we are not young, hey, young, we are not young, we are not young, we are not young, we are not young, hey. Yang tosike dao trage ne jonne go and da with la hey yang eka benena na sto agala ne hena tane da dole hey yang we are not young we are not young, we are not young, we are not young, hey, young, dosike, dao trage, ne jonne go, and da with la, hey, young, eka benena, na stoika, ne hena tane, da dole hey, young, young, The last song that I like to sing is the Walk in Beauty song. It tells you to continue doing what you're doing and to continue walking in the good path. Ne go share na ne go she awa na nga ne hosa be ekagi she awa na nga ne jo ne jo ne ro ne go she awa na nga Bite and bahol yang go she awa na ne jo ne jo ne ro ne go she awa na Khaddi big egg and kini go she awa na ho ho rongo she awa na Thank you for being here today, and thank you for saying what you needed to say about science and everything. And I'd like to thank the people who are online listening today. Thank you.